Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
All right, RJ, here we are kicking off this episode of the Deep Dive. Back where we belong, some might say. You going to practice today, me being back down here in Southern California, in my room, Afra under my desk. All is as it should be. Still, though, what an exciting, awesome week of Seattle Kraken hockey we had. I loved every second I was up there, except for all the seconds I was sick and not feeling well. Those weren't great. But going to those 3 games, being there for the 3-game win streak, seeing Matty Beniers get his first NHL goal. I'm not trying to do this to make you jealous, RJ. I promise. Just try to remind everybody what happened this week. We don't need to talk about the Minnesota game or the Dallas game. Those also happened, but less time spent on those, the better, probably.
Yeah, those don't make RJ jealous, so no need to talk about them.
No, but thank you for filling in for the post-game live, doing that solo for that Dallas game. Allergies mixed with throat infection, mixed with decongestant was just a nightmare.
Yeah, it feels like only one of us can be truly healthy at a time this month. It's just something to battle through.
I think it's just it's been a long season. You and I've been doing a lot, and I think it's just kind of catching up to the two of us a little bit. You know, as happens to the NHL players, right? You battle through the little, nicks and injuries and stuff, and it just slowly accumulates, hits you right around playoff time. Then you get to take all the drugs you want because the NHL stops drug testing, and you're good for a while. We just have to get there, RJ.
I know. Yeah, fingers crossed. That's what we can do next season.
Should be good. All right, we'll start with like current events because lots of stuff happened today. As I said earlier, you were at practice. I think we should just start there before we start breaking down the week's goings-ons and all the fun stuff that we want to talk about. So why don't you go ahead and give us kind of the lowdown from practice today?
Yeah, so it was an open practice today. I think it's going to be the last open practice of the season. It was great to see so many people there. Again, just such great turnouts, even on these weekdays. You can really sense the excitement there. But and it was great to be back too. I just felt awesome being back there and getting to see everyone again. But
any of the reporters give you a hard time?
No one gave me a hard time about being gone. Mike Benton, from the radio broadcast was very nice. He checked in.
I was gonna say he asked about you almost every time I saw him. So
yeah, no, he's very nice about that. So he was good, and just kind of did my thing, and nice to be back. But lots of news at practice today. I guess we'll start with attendance here because we had some players not there. We had Hayden Fleury. No sign of him there. I think he's still probably maybe dealing with the upper body injury. That just seems iffy. I don't know. We haven't seen him around really.
Yeah.
And the fact that Pouliot made it into the lineup last game over Hayden probably says a lot, I think.
Yeah, I think that says more than a lot. I mean, I think that means we're probably not seeing Hayden Fleury again the rest of the season.
Yeah, I would think so too. Also missing Cole Lind and Vince Dunn. So Hackstall said both of them are day-to-day with upper body injuries. The Vince Dunn thing is a little bit more obvious as far as what that was. We saw him take a stick up high in the last game against Dallas, looked pretty shaken up by that. And so, of course, he was missing from practice today. Day-to-day, no indication. That could mean anything from, he's back tomorrow to, missing the rest of the season since it's just a week. So no further answers on that.
Yeah, hoping it's just like kind of maintenance, You took a big one for the team there, and we'll give you the day off kind of thing. Let swelling go down because that's a big thing if it's impacting his vision at all.
Exactly, yeah. And with 3 games in 4 days coming up,
yeah,
you really don't want to push it. I mean, he's practiced plenty this season, so hopefully that's not too bad. And then also missing, but we're used to this. He's been missing for over a month. Jaden Schwartz. But we did get an update on him from Dave Hackstall. He was asked, is he do you anticipate him being available at all for this final week of the season? He said, no, not at this time. So that kind of confirms what we had already assumed, that Schwartz is pretty much being shut down for the rest of the season. And I mean, it just makes sense at this point. No reason to rush him back with a few games to go. And we haven't even really seen him practicing or skating very much.
Exactly. There's, nothing on the line for the team. I would assume nothing on the line for him either. I mean, maybe he's got a contract incentive in there or something, but it's it's not worth doing anything that might cause long-term damage or impact his ability to rest, recuperate during the off season and come back at 100% next year.
Exactly. Now, speaking of Schwartz, there was actually some more news on him today. The Masterton Trophy nominees came out, and I'm actually just looking up real quick the official definition for the Masterton Trophy. It's awarded annually to the player who best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to ice hockey. So every team nominates one player from their team every year to be their nominee for the Masterton Trophy, and then ultimately it's voted on. You've got the winner and the finalists and whatnot. But Jaden Schwartz is the Kraken's nominee, and it makes sense. It's well deserved. He's battled through a lot of adversity this season. We were just talking about the injury. Been a real rough year for him on that front, and then also with the loss of his father last year and his sister a few years ago, it's just been really rough for him, and he's kind of battled through it all and was still quite effective when he was in the lineup.
Exactly. He's numerous things have happened that he's fought through, battled through, however you want to put it. I mean, it was one of those, when I saw that he was nominated, I even talked with you about it. I was like, I thought he had won it already, like, because he's been deserving of it before. Hasn't, so it'd be interesting to see if this is the year. He deserves all of it, all the recognition for all that kind of stuff. And it's one of those things, you don't want anybody to have to be battling through all that stuff, but unfortunately that is the hand that he was dealt, and he's done a remarkable job of making the most of it, and helping a lot of people along the way too. All the research and stuff that he was able to bring towards the specific form of leukemia that his sister had, all the bone marrow donor stuff that he was able to do back earlier on in his career, all that kind of stuff. So it's good to see that he's getting this nomination and getting some recognition for all that hard work.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly has risen to the moment. You talk about the word perseverance as I was reading the description. That is absolutely the right word to use there with Jaden Schwartz, and good luck to him in the voting there.
Yeah.
Now, to some lighter news. On the plus side, we had a couple players, new players in practice, or players we hadn't seen in a while. And the first is Dennis Cholowski. Remember him?
Barely.
Yes, the Kraken's pick in the expansion draft from the Detroit Red Wings, who they then lost on waivers to the Washington Capitals early on in the season, and then claimed him back, later on near the trade deadline. Sent him down to Charlotte. He's been playing there, and they called him up, and he was wearing number 2. Also, it's a different jersey number. He had worn number 27. Austin Czarnik took that number while Cholowski was gone. So he was wearing number 2, and he was seen pretty active. He was taking the line rushes too. He was on at the second D pair, and most interestingly, he was on the Kraken's first power play unit, quarterbacking that unit with Vince Dunn out of the lineup. And Hackstall even mentioned after practice, he said that's kind of something we could see if Dunn misses any time. He's got that power play ability, and that's something the Kraken have certainly needed over the course of this season. It'll be interesting to finally see how he does in that spot.
It's going to be really interesting to see this week, as you said, 3 games in 4 days or whatever it is. And I mean, he looked pretty good in the preseason. Like we were surprised kind of how good he looked in the preseason, given we knew there was no kind of path forwards for him, unfortunately. With just how stacked the blue line was for the Kraken. And so I am intrigued. I think we're probably going to see him at some point. I don't know, again, depending on Dunn's availability, whether or not he gets power play time or not. But I think we'll see him just because we've seen Hackstall do this all season long. Whenever they have games back-to-back days or a bunch of games in a short amount of time, he has utilized the fact that the Kraken have carried more defensemen to really rotate certainly the bottom pairing guys around a little bit. Just saw that with Pouliot and Cale Fleury this past weekend. So my guess is we'll see him. I'm hoping Dunn plays all these games and they're just keeping him out just to play it safe kind of thing. But even if Dunn has to miss the first game or something, I think he can come in and I think he can quarterback the second unit power play just fine. I don't know that I want him on the first unit right away, but
Yeah, I think the case there is that they don't want to move Susie off that second unit because there's that chemistry already. They kind of just want to plug someone right into Dunn's spot. Maybe that would be
I,
my guess.
I was gonna say there's chemistry there, but like how much? Like really?
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see Susie up with the first unit. I mean, he's certainly capable of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully Dunn's able to play. But I think they have confidence in Cholowski in that spot if he can't. And one thing I noticed also that Haxtell was saying is like this isn't just based on wanting to call someone up for its own sake or just trying to get someone in, for just to get some games in. He's really deserved this opportunity. And he mentioned too how tough it's been of a season for Dennis because, when he was taken by the Capitals, there was a long stretch where he just wasn't playing any hockey.
Yeah.
He was in the press box a long time. And we've seen, time and time again this season how tough that is on players.
Yep.
And so he's finally got to get a little stretch going with Charlotte, and hopefully he can build on that here. One thing worth mentioning too, and this will apply also for the other call up, the Charlotte Checkers have made the playoffs. They clinched their division. As a result, they're going to get a first round bye. So they have over a week off before they would be playing a playoff game, at least until after the 30th. So a couple players were sent down so that they can get some games in, get some reps in. It's better to have them down here versus in Charlotte doing nothing. And so that kind of explains the two call-ups that we saw today. So Cholowski is the first, and the second of those two call-ups is Joey Daccord. That's right. There were 3 goalies in practice today, which was fun to see. And of course, I think we all like Joey Daccord. It was good to see him back here for practice.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he's just recently set the single season record for save percentage in Charlotte, which is impressive, of course. And they're geared up for a playoff run, but for the time being, he's going to be with the Kraken.
Yeah, and I couldn't be happier. Like we've wanted this for a long time, everybody. Like we've been such big Joey Daccord fans, and when I say we, I don't just mean me and RJ. I mean like everybody. You look on Twitter, you look in our post game lives, all that kind of stuff. He's been a name that's been everywhere. And not that, not to take away from Grubauer and Drieger either or anything, right? Like we all get it. Goalies are special little boys and we want to protect them and make sure they're happy and doing well all the time, all of them. But I'm very happy that he was able to be up here for the last open practice so everybody could see him before the end of the season. I think that was really cool of the Kraken to do, and I know it was quite a journey for him to get there. I don't know if you want to touch on that real quick. But I hope that they make the best use of him, and maybe you think he gets a start with, again, got this condensed schedule, you can maybe rotate and get a start in for all 3 guys.
I definitely expect him to get a start. And we asked Haxtell, do you plan on getting him into a game? And he said that, yes, they would like to get him a start. Haven't picked a game out yet, so don't know a particular game, but they would like to get him a start while he's here, which makes sense. I mean, why bring him up if you're not planning to get him into some game action? But I do anticipate that he'll get at least 1 start, which is great to see. I'm so excited for that. And yes, let's talk about his journey here, because we got to talk to Joey after practice, and again, one of the more fun media availabilities all season. I mean, he's just such a character. He's so funny and insightful too. I mean, there's really both sides of it too. It's great to hear kind of his perspective on the game and what his thought process is like. And then also, hear the funny stories of the last, crazy day that he had. So let's talk about his journey here from Charlotte to Seattle. Well, from Providence to Charlotte to Seattle. So first thing to know is that Joey's lease was up in Charlotte. So where he's staying, his lease was up. And so he had to move everything out of his apartment, move it all into his car by himself, by the way. No help there.
I was going to say, like, what teammates just leave the goalie hung out to dry? Oh, yeah, you set the single season save percentage record. Yeah, like, move out of your own place by yourself.
I was thinking that too. And that's why, because I asked, like, did anyone help you? I was hoping to maybe get like a teammate's name or something. All right, who's the guy who stepped up to help? He's like, nope, did all that myself.
God. I mean, maybe he didn't ask for it. I don't know. Maybe he's just
that's
one of
true.
those guys.
I mean, and in so much of a hurry too. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
he's just trying to get everything out as fast as possible. So yeah, he had to move everything that he owns into his car, he said, because his lease is up. And then he had to take 3 flights to get out to Seattle. So he goes Providence, which I guess is where the Checkers were, to Charlotte, gets to Charlotte, packs everything up into his car, right? And then from there takes an Uber to the airport, flies to Detroit, which I think was just the stopover, and then from Detroit to Seattle, gets in at midnight last night, right? And then gets whatever sleep he can. I don't think it's very much, of course. And then gets up in the morning and practices today.
Yep. I mean, that is the journey of a minor league hockey player right there. Right? Like that is the textbook definition. I'm trying to look up something right now for what his contract is, like what his AHL salary is, because that's like that's what it is. You know what I mean? Like we hear these stories so often from so many guys. 300,000. So that's his AHL salary. That's actually pretty good for an AHL salary.
It is.
That's very good. A lot of times you'll hear stories of guys doing that or whatever, and they're making like 80 grand. You know what I mean? And they're just trying to fulfill their lifelong dream and deal with all of that stuff. Otherwise, I mean, in a weird way, the thing that like surprises me the least is the whole like get in at midnight and then like go crash somewhere, then get up for practice. Because like that's just like if you traveled back into town from a road trip or something. You know?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that part, and he did mention like no one cares how much or how little you sleep.
No.
You know, you're expected to go out there and just play the best hockey you can. You know, no one really cares about that. And he did mention also the difficulty of having the AHL team in Charlotte 3 hours away. And he said it's not really the flying, the length of the flight, it's the time difference. It's just adjusting your internal clock because you know you get up at 7 and all of a sudden, you know, as far as your body knows, you're getting up at 4.
Right.
It's just this really tough adjustment to make.
Exactly. That's got to be brutal. Dealing with your equipment, especially as a goaltender, like I can't even imagine trying to make sure it's making all the correct flight changes with you. You know what I mean? Like that would be its own like nightmare just thing for me to stress and obsess over. That would be, oh my God, I can't even imagine. I just thought of that and I'm just like, oh my God, I would die.
Right. And the stress doesn't end there too, because he mentioned he almost missed his flight too. Because apparently in Charlotte, you know, the security took like over an hour. He's still waiting the security line. He you know, those announcements where they're, you know, last call for whatever passenger, right? So he gets one of those. The gate calls him and he's like the fourth guy in line, you know, in security checkpoint. He's like, no, please. I'm fourth in line. I'm going to run as fast as I can to get there. I promise I'll get there. And so he said his calves were sore from just running all the way across the airport.
Oh, that is brutal. I mean, I don't know. I've most of the airports I've been to have been like, you know, LAX, where it's like this mega airport, right? So I hope it wasn't too big, the airport in Charlotte,
right?
Terminal. But yeah, that's a nightmare scenario for anybody, regardless of what's going on. It's just, yeah, like I said earlier, it's the story of being minor league players. And you know what? Yeah. One day when you make it, it's fun to tell those stories and look back and laugh and cry and die a little inside, probably too.
That's for sure. And I mean, it's been so fun, like, you know, hearing some of the ECHL stories from some of the people like Everett. You know, Everett's ECHL stories are fantastic. You know, those stories, they're fun to tell once you're up at the NHL level, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And you know, he took it all in stride. He was in good spirits about it. Just kind of laughed it all off. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna crash out as soon as we get to Vancouver. I'm just gonna knock right out." And I don't blame him.
I was gonna say we'll know a lot about how Hackstall and the organization views him if he gets the Vancouver start.
I know. I'm gonna make him do that.
Just throw him to the Wolves yet again. Just poor Joey.
Yeah, as much as I'd love to see him, you know, get some starts in here, I hope he does not have to start against Vancouver.
He's only had the one Climate Pledge start, right?
I think so. I can't remember a second one.
Because I'd want to get him one in Climate Pledge before the season runs out. Just because, as we've talked about before, we do not know what the future holds for the Daccord-Driedger situation as far as next year. So I'd want to get him another Climate Pledge memory. Hopefully a win. That would be cool. Wouldn't it?
Yeah, that'd be nice. Get him some support in front of him.
Yeah, a good game. Let's see if we can get a 900 save percentage. Like, that would be fun too.
Yes, that would be great.
Go for it.
And then, and one more thing with Daccord too, because on the kind of the more serious side, you know, the hockey side, I liked something he mentioned about the mental side of the game. Kind of how he approaches things, you know, when the puck's maybe away from him or everything. He talked about having like a performance statement of kind of just 3 things that he'll just repeat to himself throughout a game, because he said whether you're working at a desk, whether you're playing hockey, the mind tends to wander, right? And to kind of have that performance statement, he said, it changes up. It can be little just things I want to work on in a specific game, or just generally, parts of my mindset I want to have down. But he'll usually have just like two or three things to kind of repeat and make sure he's always staying on task, which I found really interesting because, as a goalie, there's a lot of downtime, right? Where you're not necessarily actively seeing a shot right then. And the mind certainly does tend to wander, and it can be very important to keep your mind focused on the task at hand. So it was interesting to kind of get that insight into like what goes on, in the mind of a goalie. I mean, we've seen this with Chris Drieger, going to see a performance like a sports therapist, talking about that. And, I just thought that was interesting from Vicord's perspective.
Yeah, and we've talked about it with Grubauer at numerous points throughout the season, right? Like, it seems like he struggles when he goes through a long period of time without facing a shot. So it is interesting. I always love when the players open up like that and kind of give us a glimpse into their processes. We've talked several times, especially recently in light of all the Chris Drieger stuff, about how important the mental side of things is for NHL players. That you can get to the NHL based on pure skill and the physical elements, but once you're there, the thing that's going to separate you from a guy who's perpetually having to make 3 connecting flights across the country and all that kind of stuff is the mental aspects of it. And can you get yourself into a place where you can play at your best night in, night out over the course of an 82 game season? And so I always love when athletes are open about this stuff. It helps, gives us a glimpse into who they are and what their processes are. And it helps build that connection between the fans and the player themselves, which I think is very important just for, the fan element, that fanatic element. You need those things beyond just like, well, I like, Grubauer's hat style, right? Like that's something, but you need more than that if you're going to be the ultimate fan. Like we have some of those in our community, right? You need some of that stuff. You need to see those little moments where they're helping congratulate Matty B on the bench or whatever it is after his first goal. You know what I mean? You want to see those like big brother elements and stuff. And so I think whenever an athlete opens up, it helps with that. And then it also helps with the future generation of athletes. Like these don't need to be trade secrets that like, oh, I gotta worry as Joey Daccord if I talk about that this is how I deal with this, that some 15-year-old in Michigan right now is gonna come take my job in 5 years. You know what I mean? Like that should never be an athlete's worry. And it does seem like over time we're getting away from that more and more. It seems like modern day athletes are more okay sharing things. We saw Yanni Gourde helping out Matty Beniers with tip drills and with face-off drills and stuff. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, if you're going to have a teammate or somebody around, you should want them to be at their best because that means your team is at its best. And at the end of the day, you want to win championships and all that stuff. That's what you're there for. So I just like that as time moves on, RJ, like back when, you and I were teenagers, no goalie would have talked about this.
No, absolutely not.
And so I'm just so happy that we're getting to the point where you have Chris Drieger talking about working with a sports psychologist, and you have Joey Daccord talking about what he does in during games to kind of stay mentally focused. I just think it's really important, and I'm happy we've reached that point in the sport of hockey because hockey can sometimes move a little slow when it comes to those kinds of things.
That's true.
All right, so that was a lot for like just today, RJ.
I know, it felt like an eventful practice. I know, it was great. I love it. Just thrown right back into everything. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's the best way to do it. You would hate to go to practice like nothing happens. You're just like, oh, okay. I missed all the exciting stuff. No, you didn't. You got plenty of stuff here. And glad it was the last open practice. You got to see people there too. That is fun. We'll move into this past week. I'll kind of talk about my experiences up there now. You've had your share of the limelight. I get to steal it back now. Get that green box around my Discord picture. It means I'm talking. Yeah, so well, I'm going to start off with this. I'm very thankful to have met those of you that I met when I was up there, and I apologize for not meeting more of you. I was just, after the first game, I finished my second round of antibiotics, throat things started to kick back in, and I was just not in a place to do meetups at the Armory before games and all that kind of stuff. So I apologize for not meeting more of you. I was really looking forward to that element of everything, and it just Wasn't going to happen this trip, unfortunately. That being said, I did still get to meet some of you, and it was really, really awesome to get to hang out and everything. And thanks to everybody who we met up with. That was very nice to my parents. Shout out to them. They went to all 3 of those home games. My mom wearing that lucky Matty Beniers jersey. Got to think that's what did it for everybody involved. But it was a ton of fun. And oh my gosh, RJ, to go to a Kraken game and have a pregame ceremony and
Yes.
like pageantry and things happening beyond just like, hey, it's the Kraken, woo, because that's what it was last time I was up here. And it's good. It lives up to the hype in person. You know, I've seen it like 1,000 times now, it feels like, on TV and on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. But let me tell you, it lives up to it in person. That building gets so loud. The fans there get so loud. And I'm so happy to see that this deep into a season that has not gone very well. Because nobody would have blamed fans for kind of showing up a little less and maybe being a little less loud and a little bit less energized going into a game, certainly against a team like a Colorado Avalanche, where the expectation from everybody was, yeah, we're going to get stomped. You know what I mean? Like, there was a little bit of positivity because it was like, well, hey, we won the last 2, like, maybe we get this done or whatever, but there was still that element of like, hey, maybe we get it done. Yeah. Like, that's how it was in the building from a lot of people. But I also think that kind of helped, and it made it that much more special when you get out to the hot start and all that stuff. But we'll get to that game in a second. Yeah, so I love the energy of the building. That was my number one takeaway because it's right there with any building I've been in. The only other games I've been to this year have been in Anaheim. That building's only ever like 60% full. It's a very relaxed atmosphere to begin with, so it's fun in its own way, and I appreciate those aspects of it. I've talked about that several times, but it does not compare to being in a building that is full of, nearly 18,000 people that are screaming their heads off because something is happening or just because they love their team that much, and they're still so excited to just have an NHL team in Seattle. So I really appreciated those aspects of it, and that was for sure the biggest takeaway that I had. Second biggest takeaway that I had was almost flattening Macklemore when I walked into the press room. No, although that happened. But it was the win streak and seeing the Kraken play arguably their best hockey all year. I mean, I guess it makes sense that you'd figure it out towards the end of the year, that like at some point it all coalesces and it comes together. But the one thing you and I kept coming back to in those post games was this is the Matty Beniers effect. Not just the fact that he was a point per game guy through all those games, but he was able to regulate and solidify the lines and have this team play like a hockey team, an NHL hockey team, where you have a top line, you have a second line, you have a third line, and you have a fourth line. And guys were able to get into a rhythm. Players like Jordan Eberle were able to look good again because they were able to be in a system and know what their job was. It's not changing night after night. It's not changing all over the place on them because they're being shuffled around and they're getting the same ice time as 7 other players. You know what I mean? And so it's hard to figure out exactly what you're supposed to be doing when you're out there. And I thought that was a huge thing, a component to why the Kraken won those 3 games. So RJ, just so I can rest my voice a little bit here, not just talk forever. Do you think that's what it was after we've seen now a couple games where maybe the results weren't so great? Or do you think it was just Matty B initially there, electric building because of him, and they were able just to kind of ride the fan wave?
No, I think it really was the Beniers effect. And you see it even in those games that they didn't win, even in the games that weren't part of the win streak. And, we'll get to that, kind of later, breaking those down. But they've had at least a 2-goal lead in all of those games, except for, the Devils game. And that's just something that, to have a stretch like that put together, whether they finish it off or not, that's just not something that we've seen from them really in the entire season. They just look like a more dangerous team, especially when it comes to the forwards, especially offensively. It does allow players to kind of slot back into the lineup in those right spots. It allows Jared McCann to move to wing, and you stack him with Yanni Gourde, and it gives you actually a proper first line, or some semblance of that. Whereas before you just had to spread things out in the lineup so thin that there's nowhere you can stack the talent enough, because then it just gets so weak somewhere else. It does allow them to do a lot of things with the lineup that they couldn't do before. And then I think there's just something to be said for having a player like that just generate excitement from everyone. I think, the other players feed off of it. They see what he can do. They see the excitement that's just around the team and the fans and everything. And it all just kind of becomes this force, especially at home. Then when you have the crowd in on it too,
Yeah.
It just becomes this force, and it's really hard to stop.
It is, and it was so evident just watching the team, like that first morning skate I was there for before the Devils game. Like I said it, he looked like the second best player in every single drill. Like there was always somebody who's like, that's just their drill, right? Like they perfected it or whatever, right? But he was just top 2 or 3 in everything. And you could tell that other guys took note of that. Like it's hard not to when you're playing with somebody like that. And it's a young kid who so clearly wants to learn from you, and he's trying to pay attention to everything. He's making sure he's not last in the lineup to go do a drill, but he's definitely not going first because he wants to watch a couple guys go. And you could tell that's what he was doing. He wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna hang out with my buddy and talk for a sec while I catch my breath or whatever. No, he was basically at the front of the line just watching, but letting a couple guys go first so that he could figure out, okay, exactly how should I use my edges for this, or how should I use my body here for this kind of like bump drill we're doing. You know what I mean? Like it's clear that he just has that appetite for knowledge, to accumulate hockey skill and to go out there and compete with anybody, right? We've talked about his hustle since day one, before the Kraken even drafted him. This was the one thing with this kid, is that his motor is set at 110% and it never stops. And that is infectious. Like it's hard not to play with somebody like a Brandon Tanev or like a Matty Beniers and not have that rub off on you, because you don't want to be the guy going out there and kind of half-assing it when they're doing all that. Like you can't, right? Like pride, even if it's just personal pride and not wanting to embarrass yourself, you can't do that. And I would hope that it would be more than that. But for some guys, we know that is what it takes. But even if that's what it takes, it's still elevating everybody in the building from an energy level. And I do think that that does have an on ice impact, which we very clearly saw in these games. And yeah, just the hot starts in all these games. Just come out guns blazing. And that was really, really fun to see from this Kraken team that has struggled to start games at several points throughout this year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, slow starts are something that have plagued them for a while. And even in these, the last 2 losses, they came out, started hot. They got 2-0 leads in both of them, in the first period. So that's just been consistent, at least since he got there too. Other areas to improve upon, sure, but the hot starts are just great to see.
Yeah, it's been really cool. Figure out the second period, guys.
Yeah, that's been a problem.
might need to do that. To get specific to Matty Beniers real quick, so we see several goals from him, including his first of his career. What I love about all of his goals is that they're happening in different ways. And it shows just how versatile of an offensive weapon he's been. And really his assists are happening in different ways too. And I think that that's big and important as well. It just shows what kind of impact he's making. You're seeing him, already that first game against New Jersey when he gets his first goal, he's getting a cue from Vince Dunn, like, hey, if we win this faceoff, I'm going to shoot it, maybe work yourself up a little bit, be there for it. And he does, and he puts himself in the perfect position and he buries it. He puts so much more on that than he actually needed to, but you can blame the kid, right? Dropping to the one knee and everything for it. But he gets there. He knows that McCann is going to find a way to get that puck loose somewhere, right? Because that's what good players do, and Beniers is no stranger to playing with guys like that. You see some other goals where he's just sniping it, because he can. His wrist shot is insanely accurate and fast and powerful, and he's done so much work on it, like we've said before, and it just looks incredible. And then from a passing standpoint, how amazing is it, RJ, to have somebody who's going to consistently pass tape to tape instead of into somebody's skates?
It's unbelievable, unheard of from what we'd seen prior to this season. I mean, just so consistent with his passing, consistently good. And we saw it very early on from his first career point, that pass over to Ryan Donato. I mean, that tells you everything that you were going to see.
Exactly. And then at other times, he gets an assist on that Eberle snipe in the Colorado game, I think.
Yep, that was Colorado.
Yeah. And doesn't necessarily work a ton for the assist, although he is there in the corner, like, banging away at the puck or whatever. But more importantly, it showcases his ability to suck in defenders. And that's something that was growing game after game. You were just seeing more and more defenders were having to take note of where he was, having to keep track of him. First time all season long, I've seen a player on the Kraken power play command a defenseman's attention.
Exactly.
Puck opposite corner from the side Maddie's on, right? Beniers likes to line up. They have him lining up over on that right side, right? The half board there. Every single time through that Ottawa and Colorado game, he had a defenseman over there on him. And that has not happened so far this season. Nobody has commanded that attention, but he does because he deserves to. Already in his NHL career, he deserves to. And so that's going to be a lot of fun for them to explore over the course of the offseason. You can draw up some things and take advantage of that. But going back to the Eberle goal, he sucks in defenders down low, able to protect the puck, win the board battle, send it out to Eberle, and Eberle literally does a double take, real time, because he's just like, oh, there's no defender here, because the defenders all win after Maddie. And it just allows Eberle to have this, like, perfect lane right in, and the moment the goaltender comes off that post and opens up that top corner, Eberle takes advantage of it. And that's something that Eberle has not had the luxury of, being a part of play-wise a lot this season, but we got to see that, that shot is still there. If we can put him in some better positions to use it, he can still be an effective scorer for us. So that was good to see. And, talk about upping their energy game. Eberle, some of the best back checking he's had all season playing with Matty Beniers.
He's motivated. He's energized.
He is. So, really awesome. That's kind of all I had on Matty Beniers at this point. I think he's starting to get a little, not worn out, but like burned out a little bit. Like that was a big week to just kind of be your first week and go through all the emotions of the point streak and winning those games and being a part of everything. I think that's kind of what was catching up to him for those back-to-back ones on Friday, Saturday. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that would make sense, especially considering he's coming off playing a full college season. Like, it's not like, oh, he's just here for these, 9 games or whatever.
Right. It's already at the end of a season. You played a full season already, and you come in and do this.
Yeah, you jump into the highest level.
Yeah, and to get as much ice time as he has too. I mean, they were giving him some big minutes, putting him in some big situations, and also, kind of having to be one of the faces of the franchise.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, as soon as you come in, I mean, that's one thing that I really notice in these open practices is he's kind of really taken that to heart too and embraced that role as someone who's already kind of a fan favorite too. I mean, he was staying out late after practice. He was working with Ryan Donato today, kind of working with like face-offs and other things. It was funny. Ryan tripped him intentionally off the face-off. They're buddies joking around, but also, Matty gave out a few pucks to fans, taking on that role as well. It's just a lot to deal with. And I know, there were even some reporters who, from other outlets that wouldn't normally be here that were there to go get an interview with Matty. So he's clearly someone that people are getting excited about, and he's embraced that role as well. But it's a lot. It
is a lot. And, that excitement and everything's just going to grow over the course of the year. But this is why I wanted him here for some of this year, to get some of that out of the way, to learn how to deal with it. And it's one of those things, you can take advice from anybody, but you got to figure out a system that works for you as far as dealing with the interviews, dealing with the fan interactions. And yes, I'm saying deal with it. Obviously, it comes from a place of extreme privilege that, people want to interact with you and you can make their day and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you're a professional athlete. You're trying to do your job. And yes, that's part of your job, but it's not necessarily something, when you're dreaming of winning the Stanley Cup, you're not like, well, how late should I stay after practice and how many pucks should I be giving out and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that you just have to figure out for yourself. I have no doubts that he's going to figure out a great system and learn how to handle it beautifully, just because he is a wonderful, nice, humble person, as well as, being very intelligent, emotionally and academically and all that kind of stuff. But that's why I wanted him here, to learn, to get an NHL routine so that he has that as a foundation for next year, so that when you go through the ups and downs, it's not always going to be 5-game point streaks and 3-game win streaks and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have some down times, and you're going to have to, have a rock solid foundation and routine to fall back on. That's why these guys get so superstitious. You know what I mean? Like, They really rely on that stuff for those mental aspects, coming back around to that. So I'm happy that he's here. He's learning those skills, because I think that's going to help him next year. Hopefully go and capture the Calder Cup Rookie of the Year. Let's go.
Go get a Calder Trophy. Yeah, start that campaign early already. Just, Matty Beniers for Calder 2023.
It should be an exciting race because this past draft was very good, and a lot of players are going to be making that jump next year. It's going to be a lot of fun, as well as the ones who already have Kent Johnson, Owen Power. It's going to be it's going to be a good one. But I'd say Matty B's got to be the betting favorite right now.
I would think so. Yeah, he's got to be.
Not that I condone gambling. Never.
Yeah, no, of course.
All right, so any other positives we want to touch on as far as like what really made those games work? Because I just think it was a combination of the lines and everybody figuring that out and the fans. Like I can't point to anything else that resulted in those 3 wins.
Right. I mean, I think we kind of covered it, and it just turned into this momentum, this energy, this force.
Mm-hmm.
And hockey is that way sometimes. And you can tell it's kind of in the air, especially when you're there in the building too, when that force is building up in a given game or a given moment. And I recognize it from plenty of times that I've, been in buildings before where it's happened. And it's certain, even though I wasn't there, for this time, it certainly felt recognizable like that.
I was going to say, that's sounding very familiar, RJ. I'm wondering where I've heard that before.
Yeah.
When I was huffing and puffing on my way back to the car after one of those games.
I know.
Thanks for putting up with that, everybody. Yeah, no, it was very much that way. Certainly that New Jersey game. It was, you knew he was going to get a goal that night, and you knew they were going to win. It's probably the only Kraken game I've watched all season where I was certain they were going to win, with it really not looking certain that they were going to win.
Exactly.
The Ottawa game, they were just in control start to finish. So it was just like, yeah, no, this team's just got it. That Colorado game, though, there was some moments. There were some moments where doubt creeps in. But
it will end with Colorado. I mean, you could be up by 4 goals with 10 minutes to play, and there's still got to be that seed of doubt in your mind, just knowing what they're capable of.
Exactly, but they got it done, and that's what's so important. And that's what made the next couple games so kind of surprising, is they jump off to those hot starts again. Second period, just absolute collapses. And I will give Hackstall credit for learning from the first one in the Dallas game, calling a timeout, trying to slow things down, stop the bleeding. But like, I know your hands are tied in the Minnesota one. You can't pull the goalie because you have to start, Driedger the next night or whatever. But like, you could have probably used a timeout in there too.
Yep. There was certainly a timeout that could have been used. I think, you had Will Borgen, I think, go fight someone in the next shift. Yeah. I don't know that that's necessarily what you want to do. No. I think a timeout probably sends a better message. And, I don't think Hackstall would ever really straight up admit it, but just by his actions the next night, calling a timeout after the second Dallas goal when things looked like they were falling apart again, I think he's like, okay, no, let's take this approach now. I think he kind of learned from that experience.
Yeah, which, I got no problems with. I'd rather you be learning on the job than just be stubborn about it and never learn.
Yes.
I'd hope at this point you'd be able to kind of have a better feel for it and do it sooner. But we've talked about that throughout this year. He's very cautious when it comes to things like timeouts or goaltending switches. It's just who he is. It's his nature. And most NHL coaches are that way, it seems like. Like, there's very select few that'll just call a timeout early on.
Exactly. They're rare few, and especially with the goalies too. There's like 1 or 2 who always have that itchy trigger finger, but others, Daryl Sutter maybe one, but other than that, not many.
Well, and who's got like all the wins? Active coaches.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something there. I don't know. All I'm saying is somebody give me a shot. I'll come in, be swapping goalies like every game. Both goalies play 82 games. I'm sure that would be fine, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, it'll be all good. But you know what? We'll have
using 2 quarterbacks. You can't go wrong.
It certainly worked for almost an entire half for Indianapolis that one time. Until the swap happened, it was going okay. Yeah, so it was one of those things. Otherwise, I don't know. The Minnesota game, you were just outclassed. It's the bottom line. You were giving up power plays you could not afford to give up, and then you were just outclassed completely. The PK had no idea what was going on. Minnesota was sneakily moving people around. Like, it was just classic, look what we're doing with the puck over here, so you don't notice Kaprizov or, whoever moving over here. Joel Eriksson Ek, coming down from the point to be like right in front of your goalie. Who could have seen that coming, and getting it done. I would have liked for them to recognize that maybe a little sooner, but I also get that that's, like I said, you were outclassed.
Exactly, and it's so tough, especially when you're down a man, because that's really where they killed him, is the power play. I mean, 3 for their first 3.
Yeah,
it's so tough when Minnesota has one of their guys that's not Kaprizov going, like Kevin Fiala. I mean, he's been on such a hot streak. Even what it was like 8, 9, 10 games at this point, has just been playing some of the best hockey of his career. And when you have that going, it's so hard to focus when you got 3 guys that all can hurt you.
Exactly. I want to bring up Kevin Fiala actually real quick. I'm going to double check his contract status right now. Yeah, he is expiring. He's going to be an RFA though. But somebody did leave a comment on, I think it was last week's deep dive, and I didn't get a chance to answer it because I was dealing with everything last week. But they brought up the idea of potentially going after Kevin Fiala just because, we were talking about Matty Beniers being a more creative type guy and wanting to surround him with creative type players. And Kevin Fiala is certainly a creative player. That you could stick on a wing with Matty Beniers, like, oh my gosh, the stuff that the two of those guys could do together. What do you think about that?
I mean, I like the idea, of course, of bringing Kevin Fiala in. I mean, who wouldn't? That fit on the ice, I think it'd be fantastic. That's the kind of player that I think Ron Francis, if you have the opportunity in the trade market, should maybe be aggressive and try to go for. I don't know that it's tough because you're looking at kind of the draft assets to get him. I don't remember what the tiers are exactly for the RFA compensation, but you look at Fiala, I mean, he's going to get paid a lot. If you're going to make an offer that's that enticing, you're going to have to give up a lot of draft capital. And I think it would include a first round pick. So I just don't think an offer sheet is in play. It'd have to be a situation where Minnesota can't afford to sign him to whatever deal he's going to want. They're going to have to explore the trade market then, and then maybe you give them an offer that is appealing, but it would cost you quite a bit.
Yes, and maybe there's something there. Minnesota's got a lot of money tied up. Next year those buyouts for Parise and Suter are big.
Mm-hmm.
There's you're talking about 12.5 plus being just in dead money that you're going to have to deal with salary cap wise, and Kevin Fiala, it was a 1-year bridge deal for this season. Like, they had issues signing him for this season, so that could continue. That you might be able to take advantage of a Minnesota kind of being backed into a corner a little bit if they don't find a way of trying to maybe move one of their other contracts.
Right, so they're going to be in a tough spot.
It's a situation to look for, and I would have no problem with Ron Francis using the amount of capital that he has draft pick wise and going after an NHL caliber in his prime player like that. Like, we've talked about that. Like, I have no problem if you're going to bundle 3 seconds or something to go get Kevin Fiala. Like, I think that's worthwhile doing because you're not necessarily going to find a player of his level in the second round, much less 3 of them.
Yeah, no, you're not. And it's certainly not a foregone conclusion as far as those scoring wingers in Gaudreau and Philip Forsberg. I mean, those guys, who, for all you know, they might not make it to market. And if they do, you're going to pay a lot in terms of cap hit for a long time. I think Fiala's contract would be something that's more manageable for you. And, couple that in with the fact that he's like a year and a half younger. That could be a better ad. Yeah.
Or Patrick Laine. Just keep banging that drum.
Yeah. Look for those RFAs. I mean, that's what you want to target, I think.
There's no harm in asking. And I think that a lot of times GMs get afraid of asking for whatever reason. But, like, we've heard from some of the big name GMs, like some of the biggest trades in NHL history. Yeah, well, I just called up and, like, I asked about them. Like, what's the deal here?
No one knew they were on the market.
Yeah, but it's just because somebody decided to call and do their job, essentially. Do their due diligence, and all of a sudden the next thing you know, something happens, because you never know what a situation's going to be like contract wise with somebody, or whatever it may be. They're not happy with the location, whatever. So I would implore Ron Francis to go ahead and go out there and try that this offseason. Just call up some teams, see if you can make that happen. You're going through the proper channel. You're not going to piss anybody off by signing an offer sheet. Exactly. That's the big no. Can't do that.
I mean, you can't do that anyway because you're not giving up your first rounder.
Yeah, I know.
It's out of the question.
Yeah, but that would come back to haunt you with Matty Beniers. No, you're gonna pay him whatever he wants anyway. Come on. All right. So that was kind of those games. We got 10 minutes here. RJ, anything else that's kind of caught your attention from this last week for the Kraken that you want to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about draft lottery odds.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yep, those were released by the league. Of course, the draft lottery, let's tell everyone, it will be May 10th, which is a Tuesday, I believe. Let me check the calendar. That's a Tuesday, May 10th. And so just quick refresher on kind of how the lottery works. There are going to be there are going to be two lottery drawings, basically. One is the first, one is the second lottery drawing. And
for
whichever
first and second overall pick.
Well, potentially, but here's the wrinkle. Yes, because if you win the lottery drawing, you move up, quote unquote, 10 picks, or up to number 1 if it's less than 10 picks, obviously. So teams, 12 through 16 of those non-playoff teams, if they were to win the lottery, they would only move up 10 spots. So they can't, get the top pick. So that's kind of how it works. There's 2 lottery drawings. Any team that's in the top 11, if they were to win that first drawing, would pick first overall, and then there's another one kind of for the second overall pick. But that's the wrinkle this year that's new, is you can only move up a maximum of 10 spots.
Yeah, it's again, I will say, why do they keep making this so freaking complicated? Like, there's just no reason to constantly change it and tweak it and try to do all this stuff. Like, I get it, you don't want the last team to not make the playoffs. Maybe it's a Vegas this year. You don't want them getting the first overall pick or whatever. But at the same time, like, if you're gonna have a lottery for potentially 2 spots, like, just throw everybody in there.
Yeah, exactly. And they just, or at least just keep it something consistent that you do year after year.
Yeah.
The problem is that somebody complains about some element of it every year, and so they feel like they need to tweak it or whatever. And then, so some result happens that's kind of unwelcome, that just by pure luck, the same team wins, 3 years out of 5. And they're like, no, we've got to put an end to this at the end of this. And then guess what? Some other, unlikely results or whatever will happen, and then people won't like it. And you try and be reactionary. It's like the offsides review thing, where you've got the Matt Duchene thing that happens, and then all of a sudden you got to go reviewing every offside by, a millimeter. I think that's kind of what they've done with the draft lottery.
It has been. I wish it would just go back to the old days of non-playoff teams. You move up 4 spots. So if you finished bottom 5, you've got a chance at the top pick, but that's it.
I think that would be better than the 10 spot thing. Of course, the real solution to this, and maybe this isn't the place to debate this. The real solution to this, in my opinion, is going to gold drafting. And you don't agree? Okay, we'll have this debate on a regular podcast in the off season. No need to have this now because we only got like 10 minutes to go. But anyway, look up gold drafting. It's great.
Yes, I'm sure there's some nice convoluted YouTube video out there that somebody's made. You could make it, RJ. Why don't you do
Yes, that's the perfect convoluted YouTube video for me to make.
It's excellent. The amount of Excel spreadsheets you could use. It would be beautiful.
Material. Yep. But anyway, enough about being annoyed by the format. Let's get excited. Let's talk about what the odds actually are. Let's talk some numbers here.
Yep.
So the team that finishes last place, or I'm just going to talk first seed, second seed. It's reverse order of standings. Will have a 20.2% chance at getting the first overall pick. So still, more likely that they won't. The second seed will have 14.5% chance. Third seed 12.3, fourth seed 10.2, fifth seed 9.1, sixth is 8, seventh is 7.
It gets lower.
So anyway,
we don't need to put everybody to sleep.
No, I'm not going to keep going, but I wanted to get to the end of where the Kraken could possibly be, because this is how it relates to the Kraken, because given that Arizona and Montreal are guaranteed to finish lower in the standings than the Kraken this season, the Kraken can have seed anywhere between 3 and 6. So 3, 4, 5, or 6. Yeah. So when you talk about first overall pick, you're talking about, 12%, 10%, 9%, or 8%. And that's kind of how it changes based on the spots. So it's good for everyone to know, I guess, exactly how the odds change and what your percentages are for every potential game that they win, because they're going to play a few more games this season. Every win is going to potentially, move them down a spot in the lottery. So you're looking at about a 4.3% swing, based on winning out versus losing out.
Yeah, which, it's not insignificant. Every little bit helps when it comes to this kind of thing.
It's true. And for every spot you move up or down, that's your most likely pick moves up or down the spot too.
That's what I was going to say. Your average like draft position, that's the thing I always pay attention to on Tankathon, right? When I'm on there is like what are you averaged at? And right now Seattle would be their average pick would be 3.6. So kind of right there between 3 and 4. I'm okay with that spot. I think that's an appropriate spot for Seattle to be in. But it's a big jump if they Philly jumps them or they jump Philly, however you want to look at it. All of a sudden it's 4.4. That's a whole pick swing difference. That I'm not as comfortable with. So that's I think one of the bigger things that you got to pay attention to, because all of a sudden it goes from being like around 3.5 to 6 essentially, as you're talking about the range that the Kraken could finish in. So still, it's one of those things. I know we enjoyed that 3-game winning streak. It was fun to see Maddie win some games, all that good stuff. But like, I don't know, RJ. I've been so frustrated by this all year because it's just so hard for me to root for draft lottery odds.
I know, and especially when it's so far away too, when there's so much season left. Yeah. But it's the final game or two. I mean, you see that it really will make a difference. I still think the position the Kraken are in right now, the wins are more important, and I will stand by that. But I mean, I guess let's just say it becomes extra important to root really hard for the Flyers, Devils, and Blackhawks.
Yeah, if you can stomach that, first off, good on you, and two, go for it. How about the Kraken a little bit there?
Yeah, actually, as we record this, the Flyers and Blackhawks are playing each other. So let's
3-point game. Let's go. It's an interesting situation all the way around, but it's going to be so exciting, and it'll be fun. Did the Kraken play the last game of the season?
Yes, they do.
Yeah,
I think that's the only game on that day,
Sunday.
The postponed game. Yep.
Yeah, so that's also something fun. We get to finish out the season, everybody. How many teams get to say that? 2 a year.
It's true.
We're one of them. I think that's going to be fun because it means just as everybody's really starting to pay attention to hockey and everything, because the playoffs are ramping up, like the kind of more casual fans that maybe go to a couple games this season or whatever, everybody's starting to look at this. The bad teams are looking at where their team's at, going to be picking draft wise. The good teams are all looking ahead to the playoffs. We kind of get one night all to ourselves to show off the team one last time with Matty Beniers. I think that's going to be fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's going to be great for all the fans, not so much for the team and the staff and everyone who's got to travel up to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
But good for us.
Yeah. It's the job you sign up for. As Joey Decor did, right? That's, it beats 3 flights out to Winnipeg while emptying your apartment by yourself. So
yes,
somebody's always got it worse, and that person who's got it worse is generally a minor league goaltender.
Yep, that's a good way to end this podcast. I think
it's a very good way. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Apologies for any snifflings that the mic picked up on my end, or coughing or anything like that. Appreciate everybody dealing with me and dealing with both of us through these past couple weeks, as everything's just been all over the place. You guys have all been very understanding and very great about it. I appreciate that a lot. We've got the last little bit of the season here to look forward to this week. Some fun games. We'll go watch those, enjoy those, and we will see you next time for a season wrap-up episode. It's gonna be awesome.
Yes.
It's gonna be great. So it should be a ton of fun. We'll see y'all for that next time.